not okay with that anymore. And at first, like, my partner was like, but you were okay last week. And I was like, yeah, I've changed.
Men have also all these things that they suddenly become like
Up here, because you're governed by the sun and there's so much like stuff like happening everywhere.
one way to create more richness in your life. Hello everyone from Instagram
Hello.
Live. I don't know if you're here. I don't see you. Thank you for joining. And yeah, we're having a conversation today about sexuality. I'm here with Sarah and we're gonna go deep into this. So we met yesterday and I just heard from you so much about sexuality and cycles and the season and the woman body, how it's connected to cycles, and it just like exploded my mind.
Yes.
I said I have to do a video about it, and I want a lot of people to see that, because I know how important is the connection to the physical body, energetic body, connection with the emotional body. We're going to talk a bit today, and I want to just jump into that. And I heard that you just came back from 2 coaching sessions that you gave to your clients, and I want to know, you told me something about the last session that it was about sexuality, and I want to just, if you can start with that and say a little bit about what you do and stuff like that.
Yes, so I just had 2 coaching sessions today, and so there were 2, one of which was a pleasure practice.
Pleasure practice.
Yes, and and what that means in practice is that I guide women through their pleasure, because we can often get a little bit disconnected from our pleasure. And it seems counterintuitive, because inherently you would think pleasure is something that you instinctively want to engage with, because it is pleasure. So why wouldn't you want to engage with pleasure? And one of the things that I realized on my own journey was this pleasure paradox, where I realized that I was disconnected from my yoni and from my ability to especially receive, but also give pleasure. And so now that I've been doing a lot of this work and learned a lot about my own pleasure, I am bringing this work to other women who equally want to dive deeper into their pleasure, unlock unprecedented pussy power. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that in the video, otherwise we'll bleep it out.
Here you can say anything.
And what happens in practice is it's a combination of different tools and modalities that I've come across in my journey for the past 2 years, including movement, breath work, shadow work to address some of like the limiting beliefs, whatever is inhibiting us from really accessing our pleasure. And through this practice, I guide my coachees through movement, through breath, give them different tips to how to touch themselves, how to caress themselves, and everything is always sort of like keeping in mind where they are in their cycle. So the woman that I was guiding today was in her follicular phase, also known as the spring. So keeping that in mind, like it takes a little bit more time. Patience is really the key ingredient in pleasure practices, like when you're in your spring. And then it's simply just about going through it a little bit like you do in a yoga practice. So if you do a yoga practice, the teacher is there to guide you, but not to dictate what you do. So at any point in time, if you want to do something else, make it your own, add your own like little secret sauce, like that is 100% okay. Like I always say, like, my words are not the ultimate wisdom. And if anything, I'm just helping women connect to this innate wisdom that we all have in ourselves, and that is like inherent to our nature, but unfortunately often has been suppressed and repressed through years and years of conditioning, through our culture, our family, the patriarchy, and our own limiting beliefs. So it's a beautiful, beautiful practice. It is something that I'm super, super passionate about. It has just unlocked this like entirely different state of being in my life and in my relationships, both with my partner, but also with my friends and family. And it's so, so profound. And everything, obviously, sort of like for the practical aspect of it, like everything is off camera. So like I'm not like looking at her like while she's pleasuring herself. It is just me using my voice, and at any point in time, she's welcome to turn off the volume if she wants to like make it her own and just do her own thing. I am just here as like as a trail angel, guiding her on her journey towards pleasure.
So
journey towards sexual pleasure and unprecedented being fun. So that's essentially what I do in these practices. And so in sort of with my coachees, it's not that all we do is pleasure ourselves and like jerk off over Zoom. There's a lot of other stuff that goes into it, including talking about what was sex like in your childhood, like how did anyone hold space for you when you were sexually curious? How was the message?
Probably not.
No. And like as children, we are inherently like curious about everything, including like our sexuality. And so it's not uncommon for children to like want to touch themselves, play with themselves, and discover that part of themselves. And unfortunately, not all parents are able to hold space for that. So that's a key component that we also talk through some of that, talk through some of the experiences that they've had, and then work through them energetically. So help them rewrite their narrative, not just like from their brain, but like going deep into like that old energy and using pleasure as an agent to like help heal this repressed energy and help it unfold and like re-blossom.
Yeah, I'm connected to the repressed energy part of it, and I want to talk about later about how in my life I meet people that this repressed energy is causing them to even sometimes use sexual energy in an irresponsible way that usually they're unconscious of. I'm going to give some example for that later, and I wanted to hear more about like how do you do it? What's the you have here all these props that we brought,
Altar,
all these toys, and so there's a lot of things. So we talked a bit about the sexual part of it, and there's also like the cyclic part of it, and you're using like all these I want to say ancient science that we forgot about all these science, how to connect our sexual energy and to the seasons, to life itself, because everything in life is sexual energy. It's like all energy of masculine, feminine, and the seasons are connected to that too, and I know you have a lot about that you started to tell me yesterday.
Yes.
So I want to hear more about that.
Yes. So let me take a few steps back and share my journey, and then I can just tell you how it all fits in. So I've been on this journey of sexual and spiritual self-exploration for the past 2.5 years, and I've been into self-development work for probably like 7 years. In any case, around like 2.5 years ago, I realized with myself that I had a lot of repressed sexual energy in myself, and that I'd never really taken radical responsibility for my own sexual narrative. To give you like how that would show up in practice would be like I never masturbated. Like throughout my 20s, like I kid you not, I probably masturbated like 5 times. I was just so out of touch with my yoni, and didn't really have much interest in sex. And the interest that I had in sex was always focused around like the validation. So like I would get off on people finding me sexy because it like helped me heal like a wound, and I was like that's what got me off.
Yeah, and that's part of what I just talked about without knowing. It's like what happens when you suppress your sexual energy. That's one expression of it.
Yes. So a lot of like my like sexual like fuel was driven by the need to be wanted. Like that was like the all-encompassing like drive of my like sex life throughout my 20s. And I realized that I had just very little awareness of my own, what I called at the time hoo-ha. Like I didn't even have the proper language to describe my yoni and like my genitalia. And I decided to go on this journey of learning from a lot of trailblazing women and men in this space. To mention a few, like Betty Dodson, Layla Martin has been like absolutely like huge in like the sexual space. I'll share some more inspiration sooner, but I just wanted to make sure to sort of like bring them forward as well. And did lots of meditations and increasingly became aware of my disconnect to my sexuality, which was quite interesting because I thought as I would go on this journey of like exploring myself spiritually and sexually, that I'd become this like, you know, super like sensual goddess, and like everything would be amazing, and like my pussy would be on fire, and I realized it was just far more complex than that. Like I did Vipassana, like the 10-day silent meditation, and after that I just came out in such a complete libido drought. Like I didn't have any like I didn't want to sort of like touch myself, like nothing really worked. And that's around the time when I realized I was so disconnected from my pleasure and from my body. And so I started diving deeper into that, started diving in deeper into like some of the conditionings that I had around sex. I realized after Vipassana that there was this disconnect, and I'd slowly started connecting to different parts of my body. And with the awareness of your body and increased body awareness also comes an awareness of the disconnect from your body. So I was experiencing that not just with my pussy, but also like my body in its entirety. And one of the things that really helped me a lot on that journey was understanding the cyclicality of my being, of my sexuality, and diving deeper into how that changes over time. And once I started getting into that and learning how in my ovulation phase I'm all like hot and ready and super horny, I was then able to start working with these different energies that I embody throughout the month. I started getting more and more period aware around like, my menstrual health. I started taking more ownership of my diet. So another thing that was coming up as I was getting more awareness of my body was my problems with digestion. So I've been suffering from like indigestion and IBS for like years and years, which had been aggravated by a really stressful lifestyle, constantly trying to fit into this very masculine mold that our world is built around. And I realized that my cycle just plays so much into that indigestion. And a big aha moment for me was I realized in my luteal phase, which I also call the autumn, so the week leading up to my menstruation, I'd also get like really constipated. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like that's seems to be like a recurring theme. And especially around COVID time, where I was all of a sudden in one place and had more stability, and like my life was a bit more quiet, a little bit more mundane. Like a lot of the symptoms had become less intense, but there was still this like one part of my face where I would constantly sort of like get like indigestion and like really sort of like suffer with my stomach and feel like really like heavy and lethargic in my body. Like I would get bloated, and then that fed into like my lack of sex drive as well. And there was just so many things that I realized like as I was discovering all of this that fed into my relationship with my body, relationship with my sexuality, and relationship with my partner as well.
Yeah, and that's like before we jump to the relationship part of it, it's almost like we always feel all those things, like I feel bloated in my body, or for me sometimes I feel like I don't have like sex drive suddenly, like for a few days or for a week I don't feel horny at all, and then suddenly in some days I am, and like the whole season affect that, and we have all these like events that happen to us and we don't realize why, and then turns out there's a lot of things that we can learn about those, you know, those different events and how they affect us.
Yes. The mere awareness was just brought so much peace, because once I knew that there was a cyclical element to my sexuality, I stopped getting frustrated, because I was like, this is just a reflection of where I am right now, and it just enabled me to relax so much more around it, because before I would just get more and more stressed and agitated, whether it was around like my IBS or my sexuality or my relationships, my emotions, and then that would aggravate it so much more. Whereas now it's like, I am in my autumn or I am in my spring, and that sort of explains some of that.
Yeah, that awareness is
everything.
That's the start of the next thing about sexuality. So, before I got into all these things, it's like for me, sexuality was always like this one thing. Just like, okay, I'm horny, I'm not, like. And then I started to listen to Sadhguru, the yogi, that talks about that. He said something about like the woman cycle, nature, and if you pay attention to the moon, it can affect, and all these yogic practices about that. And then I realized, okay, there's something about that. And he also mentioned about men. So even men have these cycles in them. So for me, it was already a different step, because now I can explore something. Now it's not just this one truth, one reality. There's all these different aspects that affect that, and I can explore them. So we're gonna get into some of them here, and maybe give you some ideas to explore.
Yes. And I would say the first thing that I would look into, if you are looking into understanding your cycle and working more with it, is for women, obviously, to track your cycle and know when is your bleed, and start jotting that down. Start looking at your blood, engaging more with your blood, and really looking into like whether the blood looks healthy, if it's like a proper color, if it's like lumpy, and that in and of itself can tell you so much about your hormonal health, your fertility, your general health. Like it is like that is the key one. And for me, using the menstrual cup was really a huge game changer, because normally as women we're so used to like discarding our menstrual pads and our tampons, and it's like something that we don't engage with. It's like you throw it out like the toilet or in the bin. You often like hide your tampon like in the sleeve, because it's like embarrassing to go change your tampon. And then all of a sudden I had this cup, and I remember the first few times I'd take it out and I'd look at it and I'd be like, oh my god, like this is what's coming out of me. And like I'd look at it and I'd see how it changed like for each day, like so like it changes a little bit like from day to day, and would get really fascinated about it, and like would speak to my partner about it and be like, oh my god. And like back then, like I didn't even, before that, like I didn't even know how much I bled. Like there was no sort of connection to basically like 25% of my life, like in terms of like my body and my health. And so I'd say like that's first things first, like start tracking and notice like how long is your period, like how long is your cycle. So between like 25 to 28 days is like a normal range, although nothing is not normal, like they're not broken or anything. And then see how it aligns with the moon. That's always like a good fun thing to like again use the moon to build in that element of cyclicality. Yeah. And if you don't have a womb space, like a physical womb, the moon can be a really great place for you to connect with your cycle.
You're talking about men?
No, for women.
Oh, okay.
For women. But like men can follow that same like cyclicality of like.
So what do you mean by not having a physical womb?
So either women who have had a hysterectomy. So in the US, I believe the statistics are around 33% of women have their womb removed. It's like staggering statistics, and it's basically because the medical world is like, whenever there's something wrong with like women's reproductive health, it's like, all right, well, either like give her birth control, that's a whole different story, we'll do that another time, or just pull the shit out. And it's so some women don't have a womb space, or women who are not, where their biological sex is not female but they identify as female, they won't have a menstrual cycle either, but will still want to incorporate some of that cyclicality. There are also women who are disconnected from their cycle entirely due to hormonal birth control or other contraceptives, hormonal imbalances in general. Like so many women don't even have a cycle.
And you talked about also the cycle for men. You said that the women are connected to the cycle of the moon and the sun.
Yes.
And the men, the sun. How does it work?
So men follow the sun, so you follow the seasons of the year, and you also have a season throughout the day. And when I say seasons, I mean like you have a spring, you have a summer, you have an autumn, and you have a winter. And so your spring is in the morning time. That's where you're sort of like you're more alert. There's a lot of testosterone like in your body. You're very sort of action focused.
That explains a lot.
Yes.
Oh, really? It's like sometimes I get tired or something happens and there's no explanation to it. And now there's something behind it. I just want to say that a lot of things in my life were like this. I didn't understand, and then suddenly by yoga or possibility management or like it can be even like the Jewish tradition or something, you get distinctions about it, and then there's more. You can understand it better, and it makes your life better. And for me, that's real richness to learn this stuff. So yeah.
Yes, 100%. You probably also notice that throughout, like towards the end of the day, like that's where your testosterone dips. And so that's where you're feeling more social, more sort of like empathetic, more compassionate. So that's a great time for like team building exercises, for having conversations like with your partner, like anything that where you need to step into like your more like softer self. And whereas like spring is like the beginning of your day, it's great for planning, taking action, having more sort of confrontational conversations, especially during your summer. And if you start thinking of that like into your day, it will just entirely transform the way that you approach like your work life, your personal life. And it's not to say that you are bound by this cycle, but it is enabling you to work with your hormones.
Gives you new possibilities.
Gives you new possibilities and enables you to work with your hormones instead of having your hormones work against you.
Can you show it on the map? Because this map is really clear about the seasons.
Yes.
So we start with summer?
No, we start with spring. So if you think about the women's cycles, and again now going back to the monthly cycle that we experience through our menstrual cycle, you can basically think of it as like the 4 seasons, which are also the 4 seasons that we have in the world. So we start with spring, and that is immediately after your menstruation. So the first day after your last bleed is your spring. And if you
in
think
the month. So that's the cycle of the month.
So that's the cycle of my menstruation. So the first day when I stop bleeding is my first day of spring.
And when does it end? Like when it goes back to spring after a month?
Yes, so after my menstruation. So my menstruation marks the end of my menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
Not the beginning. And there's a lot of like confusion around that in this space. Like some people in the medical space refer to the first day of your menstruation as the beginning of your cycle. In reality, it is the first day where you stop bleeding that is the beginning of your cycle. And that is again shaped by the fact that a lot of this research is, there's very little research, and a lot of the research is primarily initiated and governed by men. So
yeah, I just want to bring the clarity. So we're talking now about a monthly cycle for women, but there's also a daily cycle for men, which we described, and a yearly that follows the season. And are there any more? Or?
No, that's it. And so for women, we follow the same. We follow the general cycle of like the seasons in the yearly calendar, and we also have an element of cyclicality into our everyday life. So we will also follow the sun, but then in addition to following the sun, we also follow the moon. And so we're governed by sort of like this extra layer of cyclicality. So we have even more cycles.
Okay.
And there are 4 cycles. This is spring, immediately after. And this is like a little map that I bought when I started getting more into my diet and my nutritional health, and started using food as a tool to nourish my body and balance my hormones. It is an absolute godsend, and I will share the links to where you can acquire this.
So spring, summer, autumn, winter.
Yes, exactly. So spring is the first 7 to 10 days of your follicular phase. It's also called your follicular phase. And if you think about spring, it's this kind of out in the world, new beginnings. It's like a very kind of playful, yes to everything. And you're sort of coming out of this menstruation phase that for a lot of us can be really heavy. And there's a lot of shedding, there's a lot of sort of regeneration and rebirth happening. So here you come out, it's new cycle, new me. Think of New Year's New Year energy, like new cycle, new me, and you have all of these ideas.
I was thinking about the trance party, like a nature party for men, like going out to nature, just like, hey, bring the tent, like, yeah, let's go party.
Yeah, because it's like a lot of sort of
Let's go to the beach.
blossoming, like there's a lot of blossoming.
And you feel it in the spring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's why, especially now, like now we're in spring here in Ericeira, and like I feel that spring energy in Ericeira, and I also sort of feel it every single month when I come out on my menstrual cycle.
And it's funny that you don't feel it in like area like in Central America. You don't feel the spring atmosphere because they don't really have spring, and they don't even really have spring and autumn.
Yes.
Because their season is they have dry and wet seasons. So.
Yes, and in certain countries there's very little cyclicality, which I used to love. Like I used to hate seasons because I don't like cold weather. And now that I've experienced some more winters and put more intent into my winter season, I love winter. Like it just makes me way more grounded. Like it enables me to like look in and connect and just kind of reflect and take that time to think about how did the year go? What do I want to like let go of? What do I want to like bring into the next season? So this is the rebirthing cycle. And if you think about like in terms of a nutritional perspective, there's a lot of sort of very fresh foods. So like think about like around springtime, like you don't want to eat a stew or like a really heavy soup or a curry. Like it's just like it's too much because you're so like light in your being.
And by the way, for those of you that do Ayurveda, it's also, it sounds connected to that. Like if you're a very fiery person, you're not gonna eat like hot spicy food to get your dosha out of balance. So you can, here's one more thing that you can use to, another system that you can use to understand your,
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's so many different like tools and like ways of like thinking about like your diet and like nourishing yourself. And once you bring that like element of sort of the different seasonal energies in, that can support you to make this your own and really incorporate it in a way that's meaningful to you in terms of your dietary preferences, in terms of whatever you subscribe to, in terms of like healthy lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. So let's go
to summer.
So
next we go to summer, and again like it's fresher foods, like it's salad. It's this season of like everything ripening, and so you still don't want to eat like too heavy food, but like you're still getting like a bit of a preference for like slightly like more flavorful foods. So this is also sort of like around the time where you're more social and like you're more outgoing, and you have that like everyone look at me. For people who manifest, like this is like a great time to like set intentions and manifest, and really look into like all the different opportunities and take action. And again, it has both of these seasons have like a very masculine energy. So it's all about doing, it's achieving, it is getting shit done, it is giving. So there's a lot of sort of extra energy to give. And the way that shows up in my personal life is, for instance, in my relationship, where in these two seasons, like I have a lot of resources, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to pick up a lot of the household slack. And before we were aware of the cyclicality in my relationship, my partner would used to feel really guilty that I would sometimes like do more of the work. And now we know that come these two seasons, which are governed by like the more feminine and the moon, that's around the time when I need to sort of receive instead of give, and that's entirely different energy. So that awareness is huge. So to summarize, these two are a bit more masculine, more giving, more achieving, more getting things done. What I also work a lot with in my cycles is I use different muses and inspirations depending on where I am in my cycle. So this for me is like a lot of, I call it Tim Ferriss energy for lack of better ways of describing it, but it's a lot of like, let's get shit done, let's like magnetize, manifest, like get out there. And then come autumn, or as we call it in our household, the fiery fall, that's around the time where you invoke the wild woman. And that is around the time where you will feel that you're probably more in touch with your emotions. People always like used to say that you get emotional. I think that's a very unhealthy way to think about it. I just think here you're so in your outward experience, whereas here you start drawing a little bit more in and start checking in a bit more. So what happens for me often in my cycle is here I'll like scoot over things. I'll be super chilled and I'll be like, don't worry about it, I'm fine, it's great, no, totally over it, don't. And we had an incident like last month where there was a particular incident here, and around summertime I was like super supportive, super happy, super like laid back. I was like the cool chick. And then a week later I was like, by the way, I changed my mind. I am not like, remember that thing that I was okay with last week? Yeah, not okay with that anymore. And at first, like, my partner was like, but you were okay last week. And I was like, yeah, I've changed. I've changed. And that's like, you just have to deal with that. And like,
Cycle's done. Season is done.
I'm done giving. I'm done being like the bigger person. Now it's like your time. Like, I want to receive. I am in my feminine. It's around that time when you start reflecting. You have a lot of energy to like wrap things up, get things done. And again, it's that sort of like you start becoming a little bit more withdrawn. Like in autumn time, like we start sort of going back into ourselves. We reflect on like the summer and we think like what went well and like what do we want to bring forward. So, and you see like in terms of like the diet here, it's also where we start eating more like root vegetables. We start like eating soups. It's about like sautéing food instead of like fresh foods. There will be like more heavy, like fiber heavy foods in your diet as well, because progesterone is on the increase, which really does a number on your digestion, especially if you're struggling with IBS. So yeah, here around this time is like where we get into this like autumn energy.
And what's happening in the winter?
And what's happening in the winter is this is like my favorite time. Like I love my menstruation phase like so much. Like that is the phase where I kind of sit and reflect. I take the first 2 days ideally, if not the entire menstruation off, where I don't connect with anyone. I won't pick up my phone. I'll hardly engage with my partner, and I'll just sit and be with myself and just practice like relentless, unconditional self-love and compassion. And I will journal about my month, and I will reflect on what's been working really well, which parts of me am I ready to let go. And it is a complete death. Like it is like you go through everything that has been like coming up and released.
So basically the whole world has been to a menstruation cycle in the whole COVID.
Yeah. So we are very much
that's
like,
what you experience.
Yes. So we are very much in this phase where a lot of us has been confined to our home. We've been very isolated. We've been very like inward in our experience. And that has brought up like a whole host of challenges for some people. I think for all of us, because it's just been such an interesting time where we couldn't really distract ourselves from with the external environment.
Yeah, and a lot of people report that the benefits of this cycle is what happened to them after this time with the COVID.
Yes.
And that's exactly it. And so imagine that you would have awareness about it without like being like physically or the authority is gonna confine you. You're just gonna take that time for yourself because you know that's the time for me to do that.
Yes. And it's also during this time where I really like connect to my womb space, where I get a lot of like new ideas. I'm feeling extra creative around this time. I'm not feeling as energetic in terms of like movement, and I really take the time to nourish myself. So in this phase you want to eat foods that really connect you to the earth. So think about like stews, think beetroots, think berries, things like anything that like helps you like bring this like element of like earthiness to your body and like connecting to the earth. A lot of women will also donate their blood to the earth and give their blood back to the earth. So that's another like practice that's like very common. And again, like, it's not for everyone. Make it your own and like find your own magic. But do take that time off, even if it's just a day, to get into your own space, get into your own body, tune in, listen to her, and just be really, really kind and gentle to myself. It's also the time here, like, where we, like, my partner and I will like eat lots of sort of like quote unquote like bad food and just like cut ourselves like a lot of slack.
Gremlin food.
Gremlin food, yes, gremlin food. And he has a red pair of pants that he puts on, so like it's just this kind of like completely relaxed week where it's like, oh, it's period week, and we're so excited about it because we've just developed this entirely different language around it. So so it's, for me, it's such a beautiful time. I understand that it can be a bit challenging if you are having, you know, experiencing pains or just experiencing discomfort like around your period, and I think a lot of this comes down to like us just not being enough in tune with our cycles. And like I barely have any menstrual pains, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful time where you can just like reconnect. Like I love my periods. I could talk about like my period time like for like days.
And it's interesting that you say that, because Sadhguru talk about it too. When like women get connected to the moon, he talks about it very briefly because it's, you know, it's not the subject of the video. But he said that when they connected to the moon more, they have less pain and there's, so all these things are, all these systems that can work together. Like if you hear the food stuff from me, I explored some Ayurveda, and so all the food stuff, the game with the food is like, I'm not gonna eat just the normal food, I'm gonna eat this special food that, it's like you said, it's create this magic for me. So it's not just I'm eating whatever is the closest restaurant. It's like I'm creating this whole inner world of magic, of different food, of cycles and menstruation, and that's really empowering. That's getting out of the modern culture thinking of just this is the way to do things. Like I don't know what's more expensive or which restaurant got the best, and they don't think about stuff like the cycles, like what's right for my body right now. It's like,
so building on that in terms of what you were saying, like around your diet, like diet is like such a small part of it, like in terms of like how much social energy you have, like that's like a huge component as well. So right now, for instance, like now I'm in towards the end of my ovulation phase, and this is the week where I'll be like a social butterfly. I'll be out and about, and I'll be really sort of engaging with a lot of people and being really like open to sort of new ideas and socializing and like making new connections and like rekindling old connections and going to lots of events and just being like my own little social butterfly. And this week is really intense, but I know in the back of my mind that there is next week where I'm coming into like a more sort of inward focused phase where I will have like a time to reflect and relax and do some of the things that I have been neglecting, quote unquote, or like deprioritizing during my summer in favor of socializing. And having that cyclicality is just so beautiful, because then it means that you also can protect your energy a bit more and like navigate it in a way that is more sustainable. Because I couldn't, for instance, socialize as much as I've done this week for like four weeks in a row. Like I would have a complete burnout and be in like completely shattered after that. So that's a huge part of becoming more cycle aware, of just like knowing what you have to give and when. Another thing is also just understanding that you have different preferences, different personas, and the best way to think about it is dividing it into archetypes. So each season has a particular archetype. So if you start with the maiden energy, spring, that is the maiden energy. So that is like your inner princess, you can also call it. Like it's like this like young, playful, excited and wanted to try new things kind of energy.
And I want to say just something about men that watching this and they think they don't have it, but then you feel the urge to go learn to cook, or you suddenly really into, I don't know, like photography, or men have also all these things that they suddenly become like so feminine.
Or juggling, as
So-
I'm like trying to like learn now.
Yeah, or my love for science, it's like that's your feminine side, looking for something more artistic.
Yeah.
Even if, yeah.
Yes, yes. And so that's around the time where like you want to try out new things with yourself in like your pleasure practices, with your partner. Just like go out and sort of taste the world and like take it in and see what it has to offer. And for me, this is like a time of just dipping my toes into different things and being very open to trying it out and seeing what sticks. Because often we can be a bit like, okay, this is my new system and I'm going to stick to it. And if it doesn't, like it, I mean, you keep forcing yourself into like, this has to work. And now I use my springtime as just this like phase where I'm like in my beta phase, where I'm like trying out and like just sampling life a bit.
Yeah, that's huge. It's
So-
like we have expectation that we bring certain result in our life, and a lot of like the mainstream coaching is about like get result all the time, but actually you have all these cycles, and sometimes that's the time where you're, you know, more springy, like you said,
Yes.
more playful with things, and then you can get different kind of results. And then some other times you are more focused, driven, or sometimes like wintry, inward.
Yes. And it's also around this time where I take the wisdom of the winter and sort of see what worked really well for me that winter, or what epiphanies did I get during my winter, like things that I want to try out, and then implement them in that phase. It's a very like going with the flow, easy breezy, lemon squeezy kind of energy. In terms of like your sex drive, you often experience that it takes a little bit more time to get aroused, and that's entirely okay. You might want to supplement with a little bit of lube if you're sort of experiencing like dryness, which is completely normal and natural for women to experience different levels of physical symbols of arousal. And also wetness is not at all necessarily an indicator of arousal, but that's a topic for a different day.
That is as good as an indicator, just to make sure that you know that.
So yeah. So this is also a great time to plan, which is why I brought like a little planner. It's a good way. You'll have like a lot of like new season, new me energy. So use that energy to plan for the seasons where you're a little bit more dense and you don't have as much energy to cook, to clean, to like get like all your admins, like all your ducks in a row. Like this is the opportune time for you to really dive into this getting organization in your life. It's also a time that I have a really hard time sitting still. So like I'll be running errands and like constantly out. In terms of like energy, as I said, it was like a maiden energy. So I sometimes use, so this is the time of like your maiden energy. And I use different tools to channel my inner maiden. So an example is like particular smells that are sort of like really getting me into this kind of like spring feeling. Like lemony citrus is like a really good smell to kind of like reinvigorate you. Mm-hmm. If I venture out and use makeup, it's like cute, like pink colors, and it's like more playful and a lot more, yeah. Think Selena Gomez, Taylor Swift kind of energy. Like that's where we're at, like doing our spring. and I have like whole different playlists that I listen to throughout the cycle. So like there's a spring playlist where I'm like all like shake it off, and like and it's that energy. And then comes summertime. That's where
I just met you. This is
yeah,
crazy. Like this kind of song.
yes. That's like a perfect like summer energy song that really embodies that kind of playful, fun energy.
Okay, so I want to know about the camel.
The camel. So the camel belongs to my winter phase. It's like, it's not a camel actually, it's a dromedar. Is that, they call that in English? In Danish you call them dromedar, because it only has one hump. Camels have two humps.
Right.
Yes. These are only found in North Africa, as far as I understand, and it connects me to my Moroccan heritage. So it's a way to connect to this wisdom that
Moroccans right here.
Yes. So it helps me connect to my lineage and really go into like the ancestral wisdom and potentially wound. So we have like different manifestations of like that runs through our lineage. And this is a great time for me to connect to my archangels, my spirit guides, and get in touch with like my inner wise woman. So the menstruation phase, the winter, is the crone. It's the wise woman. It's the witch. So I practice a lot of witchcraft. That's why you also feel like have a bit of sage for my winter season, because like I want to cleanse out energies, start a new rebirth. So sage is a good one for winter. I don't wear any, so I wear different jewelries throughout my season as well. Spring is like more like light jewelries. And then so going back to my winter season, I only wear one piece of jewelry, which is this piece of jewelry that I got from my maternal grandmother. I never met her, so she passed away before I was born, but I inherited this. And it sort of, again, connects me to my lineage and to like my womb wisdom.
Yeah, I want to say something about that, the whole lineage and the sorcerer, like the witch. So these are kind of dynamics that you can create in your life, and it creates context. So you decide, like I have all this series about pirate, like becoming a pirate. And once you go there and you create all this context about becoming a pirate, it creates all this magic in your life. Suddenly people react to you different. It's like your point of origin is changing. And it's the same with this stuff. You create yourself this witch kind of energy or sorcerer for men, and you have all these instruments and things in your life, and it really creates a different effect in your life and create this special magic. And it's also connected to your lineage. So in your lineage, you have all these things that are in your genes or in your past that are coming to you. So for example, my grandfathers were, you talked about your grandmother, my grandfathers were teachers for the Bible, for the Torah, for the Jewish tradition. So people came to their house and they were teaching that. And so this lineage of like a teacher or something like that came to me, and there's more archetypal powers like this. So the pirate is one archetypal power, and the witch and the sorcerer. So what you can do is you can take this as inspiration to create your own dynamic set of context, of things that create context in your life, that change the context of your life. So if you're stuck right now at home and you don't have a job or something and you don't have something to do, here's one way to create more richness in your life, to make your life more rich with something that actually create results in your life. It's this is what it's about.
Yes, it's about creating magic in your life. And let me see, so we're still in my autumn energy. So I have like a little skull here that I brought because there's a lot of death in that phase. Like it's sort of, you shed whatever you need to shed, what is no longer serving you. So that's why I brought the skull, to kind of like symbolize like this, like getting in touch with death, meditating on death, and getting comfortable with death. Sitting in darkness is also a thing that I do during my menstruation, to just be with that unknown and be at peace with not knowing and being at peace with darkness, because we have this like instinct to shy away from the darkness. We're always switching on like the lights, like even if we're just passing through a room. And this is a time where I really like sit in deep and like sit with the darkness. And then in terms of smells, what I really like for my winter season is pine, because it has this like nice Christmassy kind of, it brings me back to when I'm walking out in the forest and like the earth is really damp and wet from all the rain and the snow, and the only thing that you can smell is like the pines, because like all of the other leaves will have like be long gone, and there's this like essence of like dampness and pine in the air. There's no makeup in this phase. Like I try to generally I only try to use only organic products, but I'm extra careful in this phase because like my body is just more sensitive. I'm also more in touch with my intuition, and also more in touch with my creativity. So another thing is like a little little set here with like some paint, and it's a good time for me to sort of like get into touch with like new creative like juices and like find new ways of putting creativity into my life, not just in that season, but like in all the other seasons. In terms of sex drive, like it varies for women. I personally like experience a boost in my sex drive after my autumn, where sex drive can be a little bit lower. So this is also like a great time to engage in sex magic and connect to your womb space, and use this as a divine opportunity to decondition some of the beliefs that you may have around women's sexuality and attractiveness during our menstruation. So one of the things that's been coming up for me quite a lot on this journey is moving past this idea that when I menstruate, like I am too dirty to have sex. Like there's this idea that, oh, we can't have sex because like I'm bleeding and it's like disgusting. And so this is a really good opportunity to like sit with some of that and like work through that. And if you're in a relationship, speak to your partner about it, have period sex, because it helps you get rid of some of those like beliefs that you may be holding on to consciously or subconsciously around your desirability and your worthiness while you are bleeding. Because we're so conditioned to feel insecure and like inadequate when we're bleeding, and like to hide it and to think of it as something disgusting. If you look at advertisements for period pads, first of all, the way that women are portrayed while allegedly on their period is not at all in line with how you feel on your period. Like you're not like, oh my god, let's play tennis. Yes, I want to go for cocktails. Sure. Like that's not at all the crone energy. Like in reality, like you're way more sort of like inward focused and way more sort of like cuddly and like want to be in your own space. And then the other thing is like they never show, when they demonstrate how great these pads are at absorbing, they never show red liquid, they show blue liquid to kind of purify this incredibly disgusting blood, right? So so really sort of also connecting to that primal part of you, and being so okay and so grateful for being a woman, and being able to birth another soul through your womb space. Like how magic is that? So really, really take time to like celebrate your womanhood in this time. And yeah, so that's so like a lot about the winter season. So as you can see, there are these little jars here. And during my winter, I sit down and I scribble little notes to myself, 28 or 29 of them to be exact. Mm-hmm. So each jar will have a number of notes corresponding to the number of days in that particular season. And then throughout my cycle, each day, I take out a note. And there are very different energies in each note because they want to resonate with where I am mentally and emotionally in that part of my cycle. Mm-hmm. So spring is a lot of like, let's get shit done, and like progress, and like plan, and a lot of sort of like plant your seeds, and sort of a lot of like gunner energy, as they call it. Yeah. Shout out to Eden Wine for introducing me to that term.
I just want to say something. In your writing, there is energy. When you write stuff, and this is a way to take this energy that you write and manifest it in something else, like sending the future you this specific energy in your vision board or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's so true. So I also use like daily journaling, like whatever it looks like, poetry. But yeah, get that down. It's also, I feel like for me personally, like I'm experiencing like so many transitions in my life, and sometimes I look back in my writing from like a year ago, and I'm like, who is this person? Like, was that important to you back then? And it's just really interesting to reflect on that journey and help you also get like some catharsis as well. Like sometimes you can sit with some things that are really heavy, and writing is just such a beautiful way for you to process that and work through it, and give it a new perspective as well. So yes, so much yes to writing. This is the summer.
You have a book, by the way, that you write.
Yes.
You write a whole book.
Yes. And
something I'm getting at.
Yes. And that's...
what's the name of your book?
It's called Write, Meditate, Masturbate. And it is essentially a documentation of this whole journey that I've been on for the last 2.5 years. And some of the reflections, things that have come up for me, realizations.
You have it online?
No, not online.
Okay.
Not online. It's coming out next month.
But so, oh wow,
Yeah.
next month.
Yeah.
So we sure put a link down here to get it.
Yes. Creates a bit of accountability as well. So thank you for mentioning that. And then so this is a. So I'm gonna read one of the notes for like a summer note. I don't have today's note here,
Great.
but
That's a summer note.
it's a summer note.
Okay.
It says, "Sweet talk your restless mind. It's okay not to have all the answers. Your life is unfolding at exactly the right time in precisely the right order. Everything is just how it should be. All is well." And for me, summertime can be like a really fun. Yeah?
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
I saw you getting the energy of that note.
Yes.
What did you feel? Can you say something?
I feel a lot calmer. So what happens in summertime and spring for me, because it's such an outwardly focused not 2 seasons, is that I can get really hyper aroused and like almost, get all the way up here because you're governed by the sun and there's so much like stuff like happening everywhere and you're so
And
much.
you also have a lot of fire element in you.
Yes.
So that's even more empowering that.
Yes. And then once you start getting momentum, you start like, okay, but maybe I should do this and I should do this and I should go here and there and there and this and this and that. And I get like, and I can't sort of like ground myself. So this was like the intention of this message was to just be like, be calm. Everything's okay. Everything is happening at exactly the right time. You're exactly where you need to be. Just be okay. Like just breathe, and like just be kind to this restless mind of yours, because there's so many ideas and so many impressions in this season, and it can be hard to know what to take in and what to let go of. So this is such a beautiful time for you to just create, but it also means that you sometimes lose track of yourself because I'm constantly out here. And we did a beautiful grounding exercise at the beginning of this session, because I came up and I told you, like, I'm so like hyper aroused and unhinged right now, and I've been socializing way more this week. And so you did this beautiful grounding exercise, which really like brought me back. And it's a bit of the same energy of like, let's go back, let's sit back. We've got this. Everything's okay.
Yeah, I have this centering process in another video if you want to check it out. So, did it.
Yes. I'm so grateful for you. Like, I would have been an entirely different person sitting here had we not done that. I was like, how am I gonna manage? And then autumn energy, which I'm coming into tomorrow. Yeah.
So I just want to bring clarity about that. You wrote these notes for yourself in your menstruation cycle.
Yes.
And you said it takes about an hour and a half.
Yes.
Or something like that.
Yes.
So, yeah, you take this time, do this experiment, and see what happens.
Yes, and if you feel a little bit lost for inspiration, I am posting these on my social media account, and yeah, you can use them to start off with until you feel comfortable creating your own magic, and see how it works for you. So my bleed is on the moon, so it will follow, like I follow the moon. So you may like be on a different cycle, so just keep that in mind and like take away from it as you need.
So yeah, I'm sure people have a lot more question about all of this because we just touched the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
So I wonder if you can say like I'm also gonna put it down below, but just say your social media, how people can find you, or
Yes.
where do you want them to find you and how?
Yes, so I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I have an Instagram account and a Facebook account. I'm also on Clubhouse. Sarah Navarone is how you find me. There's only one of me, so that should be pretty easy. Navarone is Navarone. And if you want to talk about menstrual health or sexuality, like I'm always up for these conversations. Like I can talk for ages about this. And if you have any questions, we can go through them, just share them with us, and we'll see how we can help share the light.
Yay! Thank you.
This is so good.
so much fun.
Yes.
I have a lot of joy from bringing this knowledge and possibilities to everyone that's watching. Thank you for watching. We'll be here to bring more of this. This is part of my lineage, and I think also yours, to bring this knowledge to the world. Thank you so much. See you next time.
We love you and we appreciate you.